Evening message on May 31st, 2022. Don't be stuck with just awakening or reserved manners. That is the samutai. Beyond this regard, brighten out furthermore. Don't be stuck just within awakening, so that it will be penetrating through the brightness, awakening in the way of disregarding in the way with awakening, so that they will not be just limited to awakening. The awakening in the way of disregarding, it will not be limited with just awakening. It is beyond it. No grasping for disregarding or awakening. This will be without obstructions. In this way, it will not be about attachment or detachment altogether. Well, to disregard, even from the disregard itself. This is beyond disregarding. Keep on through the brightness. Awaken out, well to awaken out. Don't sink in, don't maintain anything. The disregard is not itself. Let's go beyond it. Don't be limited with just disregard in the form of sinking in stillness and indifference. That is realm of existence. That cannot be helping samsara at all. We need to rely on awakening and the brightening in the way of disregarding as well, in the way without identifying as well. The brightness or the brightening or awakening doesn't grasp itself. It's not relevant to itself. Then awakening and brightening will be beyond itself. To give significance and meanings within awakening, after a while, one will be sleeping. Without thinking, it's impossible to sleep. Continue in the way that gives no significance and meanings to disregarding itself. Don't be limited with only disregarding. Beyond disregarding, that means awakening and brightening is already there. When There is no limitation with only disregarding. Then the brightness is there automatically. But if it is limited with just awakening and brightening, it's impossible to be shining out because there is maintaining within itself, just like there is a burden within maintaining and sinking. How can there be a blessing beings? Because there is still a burden there. Still sinking and maintaining within states of mind. That is a burden. If disregarding is there, discard it furthermore. Give no relevance to itself furthermore. Give no significance and meanings to it furthermore. This will be beyond disregarding. It turns into awakening and brightening, purifying right through. If disregarding is there already, just give no significance and meanings to it furthermore. Stillness and indifference from disregarding is impossible to bless beings that is stuck with itself, guarding itself, uninvolved with the disregard itself, uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself, uninvolved discards itself. Give no significance to the uninvolved itself. Don't guard it. It's impossible to bless beings. If it's beyond disregarding, it's shining out instantly, awakening out instantly. In conclusions, constantly go beyond disregarding. Disregarding doesn't grasp itself. This is beyond disregarding. It doesn't grasp itself. It's not limited with just itself. simultaneously awakening out throughout internally and externally. Awakening in a way without identification. Use it for the blessings, not for the sake of oneself. All the conclusions is to be concluded for samsara. This is not to use effort to conclude for oneself. That is about grasping, discreetly grasping for oneself. This is going to create stress and uptightness. Body, mind, aggregates, Dhamma and everything cannot be used to grab. This is about blessing. So use that which is not about the disregarding for blessing, all the same to everything. The disregarding doesn't have any meaning at all. Share it simultaneously, all the same to everything. This is not about grasping for oneself. So don't be obsessed to conclude for oneself on and on. That is about grasping. The conclusion must discard itself. It doesn't grasp itself. The disregard doesn't grasp itself. How can it be taken to oneself? The disregard doesn't grasp itself. Well to brighten out, well to shine out, without limits. The disregard has no limits. Don't be limited to certain extents. Go on to purify without limits. The disregard means no limits. It's the boundlessness. It's not just about disregarding. Actually, we cannot sit too long. We need to move about so that the body is awakened. When the body is awakened, it will stimulate the mind to be awakened as well. To sit, it will just drown in itself. If it's well to uninvolve with the disregard, one will realize that a tiny bit of stillness and indifference is already suffering because it's blocked, it's not released, because there is an oppression within stillness and indifference. It creates the unbearable. If it's well in disregarding, well, then stillness or indifference is not relevant at all. Constantly, internally, share the disregard and that which is not the disregard, awakening beyond awakening, brightening beyond the brightening, constantly so. Tiny bit of stillness is already a suffering because it's blocking in itself. The disregard is not at the being still or not, indifferent or not, sinking in or not. The disregard is not limited to itself. It is boundless. Continue to proceed beyond the disregard, beyond non-attachment. It doesn't grasp itself. It's not about anything within the non-attachment itself. Continue onwards beyond the non-attachment itself. The non-attachment doesn't grasp itself. No significance and meanings to the disregard itself. Will to brighten out. Are you shining out, awaken out, extend it? In a way that is not about grasping. Awakening doesn't grasp itself, brightening without grasping itself. The disregard doesn't grasp itself. Extend it without grasping. Therefore, everything has to be in the way of disregarding to disregarding, no identifying to no identifying. Then it will not be about an attachment automatically. It will not be about any fixation to anything whatsoever. The mind will not be fixated to itself automatically. Well with it, otherwise there is no cutting. To be limited with just disregard, it doesn't cut through itself. It cannot help samsara through cutting. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, so that there will be simultaneous cutting through internally and externally. This is not about using the mind to aim towards one another. That is clashing. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, with everything. Don't use the mind to project on anything through looking, seeing, and knowing. That is clashes. There will be a bounce back. Whatever type of mind that is used, it will be bounced back to itself, to oneself. Disregard will, without purification from the disregard itself, there will be a bounce back. So use that which has nothing to do with disregarding to purify it simultaneously. Therefore, all the circling of samsara is through the usage of the body and mind and verbal. Without purification, it turns into karma, karmic bounce back to circle in itself again and again and again. This is no purification within mental karma. Give no significance and meanings to the disregard itself, to the non-attachment itself. Give no relevance to the disregard itself. This will turn into purification of the extinction of the emptiness throughout, internally and externally. Diligently purify it. Diligently purify the conclusion itself. Otherwise, there will be only the leftover of karmic difficulties. Without will to disregard or uninvolved with the disregard, then it will be will to disregard or true disregard is not the disregard itself. It's not about a language or just a feeling. It's not a state of mind. It's not considered as symptom or anything whatsoever. Will to disregard, uninvolved to the disregard itself, there will be only purification throughout form and formlessness. It will not be left as karma. So continue to purify through the extinction and emptiness. Don't think that the mind belongs to oneself. The mind doesn't belong to itself either. It doesn't belong to anyone. Anicca and anatta doesn't belong to anyone. Suffering doesn't belong to anyone. It's always bygones from itself at all times. It doesn't belong to anyone or even to itself. It's bygone in its nature, in every atom of itself. It's not substantial, and it doesn't belong to anyone. The true mind doesn't belong to anyone. If one thinks that it belongs to oneself, this is just stupid. Always my mind, on and on. This is stupid. Even the mind itself doesn't belong to itself. Anatta doesn't belong to anatta itself. Anicca doesn't belong to anicca itself. Form and formlessness is anicca. Body mind is anicca. Whose is it? This is so stupid. Always belonging to oneself, always owning it. This is stupid. Even the disregard is not itself. Even the non-attachment is not itself. It's meaningless in itself. It doesn't belong to anyone. So, uninvolved with the disregard itself, then it will be true disregarding. This is not the disregard that has the delusive attachment that owns it, always drown in it. Uninvolved with the disregard itself, give no significance to itself. Anatta doesn't belong to anyone, even to itself. Non-attachment is not considered as being something. Who is it that is doing the non-attachment? Uninvolved with the non-attachment itself. Don't grab it. It's impossible to grab it. Uninvolved with the non-attachment itself. It's impossible to grab it. This reflects the non-attachment itself. Non-attachment to the mind itself, non-attachment to the state of mind itself. Body, mind, aggregate, and Dhamma has no fixation to itself as it is. Uninvolved with the disregard. The disregard doesn't belong to anyone. It reflects the non-attachment. It reflects non-fixation to itself. Non-attachment or disregarding is not about attachment or detachment. It's not about liberation or not. Uninvolved with the disregard itself, it's not about being liberated or not. Attachment or detachment. The non-attachment or disregarding is not itself, just like emptiness is not itself. When giving meanings as being empty in this way and that way, being empty, the emptiness is not emptiness itself. Don't be deluded to give meanings on and on. This is grab it to be deluded using viewpoint. You can write about it in a whole book. This is samsara of titi, of opinions and meanings. Grabbing something that is not about anything to deludedly thinking that is something. In this way and that way. Therefore, every conditions of state of mind and Dhamma is always bygone to itself. It doesn't belong to itself, doesn't belong to anyone. So don't be deludedly fixated to it. That is deludedly being stupid all by oneself. The grasping mind of each realm of existence. It creates samsara to itself. It's fixated deludedly towards something that is not about fixation, That's why it's become samsara of delusion to fixate and the karmic retributions from itself. Karma and karmic retributions of the delusion to fixate. The non-attachment doesn't mean anything, child. The disregard is not itself, child. The disregard is not considered as anything. There is no need to interpret further because it's gonna be deluded viewpoints.